for Brazil and part of South America.
Hi, my name is Martina Santoro, and I'm also part of Paulo's team of evangelists in Latin America.
Oh, Heloá, you're mute. Can't hear you.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself while she's getting her stuff figured out. My name is Matt Argueta, and I'm an associate producer at Epic. I've been working on Fortnite for the past 2 years, and happy to be here.
Is it working yet? No? Oh no. Well, we'll continue. We'll continue on, and it's okay. You can jump right in and introduce yourself when you get the mic working. It's not a problem. Alrighty, y'all. So thank you so much for being here and taking time on your Sunday to talk with us about what you're doing at Epic and what does the Latinx representation mean to you and how you're making changes or perhaps making initiatives in order to build community at Epic. So first off, really a general question just for everybody. Like, how did you get started in the games industry and why are you at Epic? So we can start off again in order if you would like, if that makes it easier.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess every single time. Yeah, I don't know. I got into the game industry really in an odd way. I'd always been super passionate about games in my life. I was actually going to school to be a special education teacher, and I had a friend who was doing QA at a company called Midway back in the day. And we were just talking about what our day-to-day was like, and he was telling me about that job of being able to kind of like play games and find things that were wrong with them and write them up. And it sounded interesting and something that was different. So I was able to get an interview and got in and just went from there. And QA was a really awesome, kind of like ground floor starting position, because you get to learn about the interdependencies of what game development is like, right? Like you understand how systems relate to each other and you understand how people kind of like relate to each other. So it was the perfect entryway. And I've just used that like my entire life to trying to get there and make opportunities for other people. So it's been awesome. What about you, Sean?
Hey, so I actually got my start in customer service back in the day when Warhammer Online was coming out. I used to live in Virginia, and there was a studio where back then I was in retail, and I took my resume, and I was foolish enough to just go to the receptionist and drop it off. And thankfully, I fooled someone, and a few months later, got the call and got my start there. The game industry is a really unique place, and there are lots of opportunities for you to grow. So I grew within the company, found some opportunities that I chased in QA, was in Bethesda for a little while, and then I finally landed at Epic, where I supported the engine as a support manager, helped launch mega grants, and now I'm on the store team.
So me now, well, actually started always like playing games, of course, but actually started on the technical side and the modding community in the late 90s. And then later on, I mean, there were not a lot of companies in Brazil to work for. So I had to basically go and make my own companies, open my own companies, do some level of entrepreneurship for a few years, founded a few companies, released a few titles, worked many titles, interesting titles. Then later on, there was this opportunity to start rolling operations for Epic and for the Unreal Engine in Brazil and Latin America. And it's been 5 years so far. So it's been a good ride.
Well, I started with my own studio, actually. It was a pretty wild ride trying to create a company that made games from Buenos Aires, from Argentina. So I think I learned, I don't know, on the streets with my team and my partners on how to get into this industry that, as we were talking earlier, really an amazing place. It received us with open arms, and we got all these amazing chances to grow, even though we were like literally in the end of the world, right? As far as you can go south, that's where we were working from. And yes, and we were very active in the community. We were working with the local studios in Argentina to help the local developers grow, and that's how I got to meet Paulo and the amazing team from Epic, David, Alan, and we always worked really close, trying to bring the engine to the full region, actually. And I was super lucky when last year they popped the question. They asked me to join them. So yes, it's been a super fun adventure, and I couldn't be more proud. Hello, are you?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Nice.
Great.
Sorry,
And
guys.
just introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about why you work at Epic and how you started in the games industry.
Sure. My name is Heloá Cabrini. I'm Brazilian. I'm the localization QA tester for Brazilian Portuguese. And unlikely most of my friends here, I am pretty new to the video game industry. I started work as customer service, just like Sean, in 2017. And in 2018, I started working as localization QA for Epic. That's about it. I guess I was just very interested in do all the language and cultural aspect of adapting the game and all the content to the Brazilian market and the Brazilian culture.
Hey, so I'd always kind of wanted to work in games ever since I was a little kid, but as I was growing up, didn't always necessarily know what the right path was or what opportunities were available in terms of both just either postgraduate from high school or college, or just what kind of opportunities there would be available, like at the collegiate level as well. Fortunately, around my senior year of high school, I was going around George Mason and saw they had a video game design program that was pretty early in its startup, in its infancy. I think it had been around for 2 years at the time that I applied for the program. And after 4 years going through there at George Mason, I graduated in 2015. And like Hector and some others, I started off in QA in 2015 at Bethesda Softworks. I was there for about 2 years, worked on a bunch of different titles with a bunch of different studios, but after working in QA and having some background in the game design and learning about design aspects and production aspects, and I kind of wanted to try something different, but it was difficult to really find a path into getting into production without much experience. But I've known Sean for a long time, and at the time when I was looking for opportunities, he was at Epic and recommended a production assistant contract that Epic had for Fortnite. And it was difficult at the time to try to I was living in Virginia at the time, working in Maryland, and leaving a full-time position for a contract to try to switch over to a different track in a different state was a little nerve-wracking. But after having conversations and weighing the possible benefits and the outcomes with my wife, we decided to move down here, and it's been history ever since. I've been working at Epic for about 2.5 years at this point. I'm an associate producer on Fortnite now. I've been working on lots of different stuff within the company, and I've learned a lot and want to keep learning and keep growing here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all your stories, because really, when it comes here to the community, especially in Latinx and gaming, everybody has a different pathway. And it's so good to hear that each of you entered the industry in different ways. And that gives a lot of hope to a lot of folks who may see themselves like they will never get there and they may never get a chance to. And it's incredible to see that anywhere from like customer service to QA, like you all weaved your own pathways into the industry, and you're at Epic, which is such a well-known company. And I'm sure in chat, like people would appreciate that so much, that they can see that there's people that look like them who have been able to make their own path in this way in different areas. So I think that's really awesome. So when it comes specifically to Latinx heritage or like Latinx communities, I know some of you are involved, like Martina, you are involved in Latinx in gaming as one of our country leads. And Paulo, you mentioned that you were from Brazil, and you also, Heloá. So I'm wondering, is there specific communities that y'all integrate yourselves into and that you give back to in the Latinx community to uplift developers perhaps who want to get to the same spots that you're at, or who don't necessarily even or are even in the games industry, but they would like to enter? Are there things that y'all are doing, initiatives that you are part of, where you are advocating for developers and students perhaps who are trying to get into games?
Paulo, would you like to start?
Yeah. We've been. It's a little bit a part of our what we do day to day. I mean, in our job is been involved directly with the game development communities, and by that it means that we're also try to reach the local game developer organizations all around those countries, and try to be supportive in a way and use the weight of the company, but also some of my past experiences and how we can transmit those. The little knowledge that we have about making games in Brazil and Latin America to the newcomers, to the indie developers who are just coming to the space. I would say that this is not like, for me personally, I'm not like in specific involvement like Martina is with the Latinx community, but I can say that it is eventually part of our job. I mean, most of the company.
We lost him.
Oh, how we lost Paulo?
Oh
What
no!
he was saying was so important that it broke the internet. Got everything.
Sorry,
you're
can
back.
you hear me?
You're back. You're back.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay.
So yes, we do have mature teams in Latin America, but the great majority of them are newcomers and indie and not very experienced. So in the end, it's a little bit part of our job to be nurturing these teams and making sure that they're on the right path.
Yes, we work really closely also with the local communities, not only with the game developer associations, like we mentioned before, but also we work with universities. We work directly with the studios, with the people that need our support. We also participate in talks, sometimes even in high school programs. It's really interesting that in Latin America, maybe not everybody knows that they have a future in the video game industry. And I think it's very important, especially for girls in that really young age, to understand that they have a place in the industry, that they can be whatever they want, actually. The video game industry doesn't only need programmers, developers, people who code, but we also need people with so many different backgrounds, even accountants, lawyers. And this is something in the Latin American community that we are actually trying to also reach out to, not just the people from the coding associations. I think there is a lot of work to be done here in the region, but so far we have these amazing tools from Epic to actually make all of this happen. We've been working with the Mega Grants team. We've been working with the Epic Games store team, just trying to bring more, like Latinos into our ecosystem, not only support through the engine, but then also through funding and opportunities of education, the fellowships. And it's been a hell of a year for us. Luckily, we are growing, and we have a huge team. We have, of course, Christian, Sebas, and Nacho, also in Latin America, and we are trying to help everybody here.
That's awesome to hear. And that's a really good point that you make too, Martina, that a lot of people who want to enter into the industry, especially newcomers, like have this really boxed in idea of what that means, that it's either you're a programmer, you're an artist, you're a designer, and they don't think about necessarily roles like production or like accounting, like being a lawyer, being in IT, being the person in the background who makes everything run. They really don't think about those things, and it's super important that we let our community know that yes, there are so many roles outside of just making the game that are just as important and valid at different game companies. Which brings me to a point. So Heloá, you are a localization QA tester. So localization is everything, right? Like if we do not localize our work, then how is it going to be shared all over the globe? So can you talk a little bit about the importance of games to be localized for different audiences, and perhaps even what is localization? Because maybe there are people in chat who are watching right now who don't even know what that means.
Sure. Just to make sure, do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will check all the time now. So most of the times localization is confused with translation, and these terms actually mean different things. Localization is the entire process of adapting a product or a content to a different market or a region. And translation is one of the steps of localization, but is not everything. So it's also part of our job as localizer QA testers to modify graphics and designers to properly display translated text, because our language, like Portuguese and Spanish, tend to be much longer than English. So this is like an issue that we always have. We also need to pay attention to change content and make sure that suits like regional preferences. We are also the ones responsible to identify things that could be potentially problematic or irrelevant for a respective market. So in short, localization is what gives something the look and the feel expected by the target audience. And I think the importance of localizing a game is that when a player see that their language is in the game and they see there's like an element of their culture in game, it's like they feel represented. So it's like they feel noticed, and this gives like agency to the players, and it means that there's a dialogue being created between the player and the creators, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something too that people don't realize, even as developers. They always like equate localization with translation, but it's exactly like you said. It's way beyond that, where sometimes there's even idioms in English that don't even translate into different languages. So how do you fix that, and how do you make things make sense, especially like jokes and things like that? It's really important to be able to transfer it to the culture so that people actually get it. And if it's not funny, then like remove it, right? So I think that's something really important, and you really touched on some awesome things that like completely like go over my head even as a developer myself. So thank you so much for those things. So Martina, when it comes to being a game developer and considering how to like broaden games and things like that, why is it important for devs to include more cultural references and diverse character backgrounds? So I am assuming that you as an evangelist, you get to talk a little bit more like one-on-one, and also you, Paulo, one-to-one with devs who are just entering, who may not know certain things. So do you get to talk to them about the importance of having cultural references or even diverse character backgrounds, or do you get an opportunity to give your input sometimes when you see some projects like that people are making?
Shall I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a very fine line. You know, in Latin America, we do have a huge market, but maybe it's not as developed as other regions like Europe or the US. So something that it's really interesting is that when we are making games, we are actually making games for the whole world to enjoy. People don't know this, but some of our biggest game hits are coming from Latin America, and they are made by Latinos, and nobody knows this. And something that is interesting is like, while in one way it's really important to make something that everybody can relate to, what I'm thinking is like, it's really important we define what does everybody mean, right? If we don't bring more people in the industry that it's different, that have different backgrounds, have different life experiences, and I'm not talking just about being a woman or being Latina, maybe it has to do with my upbringing or I don't know, my faith, or even I don't know, my sexual orientation or anything like that. It's going to translate in the kind of games that I'm making and the characters we are creating. And this can make a huge difference on the people that are playing it all over the world, even Latinas abroad, you know, or people that can find in a game, you know, someone they can be inspired by. So I think it's really important that we find a way of bringing in more Latin content into games. Maybe we should be very smart on the way we are going to do this, because we are competing with these huge titles. But then I don't know, we were talking earlier on how the Assassin's Creed people do it. You know, it's kind of like, well, you have this character and he is going through all these ages or all these different cultures and times, and you're learning so much from the environment, and you can actually do the same thing with Latin culture. A few years back, we were one of the few teams in Latin America that got to work with the people from Square Enix when I was running Occam Studio. And I remember that Fukushima-san, the founder of the studio of Square Enix, wanted to make a game that was for Latinos by Latinos. And I remember we were saying like, well, you know, Rio Grande down, we are not all Mexicans. It's like, what does that mean? What does being a Latino mean? And what do you want us to put in the game? And something that is really interesting, especially in our countries, is that we are a mix of everything. We have people from the original cultures of the continent, but then, I don't know, my grandparents came from Europe, and then we have people coming from Africa. My best friend's family is from Asia. So I think that something that defines us is that we are a mix, and it's something we can bring into maybe our games. Something also that one of my partners actually discovered is that we as Latinos, we are very hard workers, and we just keep moving forward. You know, it doesn't matter what it comes, you know, like whatever comes our way, and a lot of shit happened to us. We are a very kind of positive attitude, you know, like just keep moving forward kind of culture. And I think that sometimes we do find that in our games. It's something that I find that as a common ground, that sometimes we kind of like laugh at our crisis, or, you know, like situations that may have other cultures kind of like froze, you know, and stay kind of like, I don't know, like petrified in a situation, and then we just keep going, we go through it. So I don't know if I'm talking too much. Paulo, do you like me to jump in?
I'm sorry. I think that Martina summarized pretty much. The Latin American market is big. I like to say that it's not big enough. It's not big enough to be the focus most of the times, but it's big enough to not be ignored. So in some way or form, you have to tackle the Latin American market. But it's still for Brazilian devs, for Latin American devs, the focus is usually the world. And in Europe and the US, as the Asian market, it's quite a bit harder for us to reach. So, but once there's an opportunity for them to release games in Brazil and to assess the Brazilian market, yes, we try to make them act as the international companies when they try to reach the local market, right? Like we know it more than everyone. We know it more than Epic, than EA, than everyone, because we live here, so we understand the culture. And remember how our heart feels so warm when an international company is doing something that it's related to our country, to our culture, and they get it so right, and how good is that sensation when this happens. So once in a while we try to convince developers to do that, because it's, in the end, it's good. I mean, actually helps with the representation. So gamers, I mean, developers are gamers at heart, so they can see themselves in the games, and it can actually get them inspired to make games. But it's also important in a if you can say, in a market, in a financial way.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%, Paulo. And that's a really interesting point that you made there about it being that when you have representation at a studio or a company and you're abroad, you bring this new perspective that it's very refreshing for other folks to see, because you bring all of your experiences with you and you are able to add to and be an asset to your team in ways that are sometimes even unexpected, like the marketing, understanding that if I am, for example, I'm from Puerto Rico, if I'm from Puerto Rico and we're trying to reach out to Latin America or the Caribbean, I can give a little bit of information to my team because I was from there, I grew up there, and I understand the mindset and the culture and the communities versus somewhere else. So it's really good. It's a really great asset to have. It's not just about being like, progressive or anything like that. It's also about being like practical and understanding where you want to reach and what are your best avenues to do that. So, Sean, we at Latinx in Gaming, we just learned recently that Epic has like a new employee resource group, which are called like ERGs. So, do you want to talk about Epic's ERG and what are some of your goals and what are you building internally for your Latinx identifying employees to continue to have that heritage and that everything cultural that they carry with them, like I guess shine really as in Epic and as being part of the Epic community.
Having some technical issues on my end, but I'll answer in a minute.
Oh no, do I have to repeat again? I don't know if I cut off for you.
It's I was really to come to the.
I can definitely loop around and come back to the question if you want to.
We'll come right back to it.
Okay, no worries. Alrighty, Matt. So let's go with you then. So what, like, out of all those things that you have learned, like being at Bethesda, for example, and all these skill sets that you have learned from being in like a part of really big name titles, like what are some takeaways that you have learned from working with global teams, like big games like that, like the Evil Within 2, Dishonored 2, and Fortnite? Like, what are some takeaways for you personally and professionally that you have taken away from being part of those teams?
I think taking away personally, it's been really cool to be a part of so many different titles from so many different companies. Just at my time at Bethesda, I'd probably worked on a total of 6 or 7 different games, just because of Bethesda Softworks being like the publishing company for ZeniMax proper. So being able to, at like such an early stage in my career, be able to like interact and work hand in hand with so many different kinds of people from all over the world on some major leading AAA titles was super awesome. From a professional standpoint, just like things that I've learned in working with different studios in different countries and different cultures, it's just really interesting seeing development practices and design implementation from different developers from different countries. Like when I was working on Dishonored 2, I was working with Arcane Lyon in France. When I was working on The Evil Within 2, I was working with Tango in Japan. Even working on stuff here in Epic, early on in my position here, I was working with the internal team here and our team in Shanghai for like China cutover. So learning a lot about the Chinese culture there and just what it takes to publish a game in a region both from like the content perspective of making things compliant with certain government standards or just what's expected of the region, as well as just marketing and publishing outreach for different areas. Like before I started doing things here, I had no idea how predominant PC cafes, for example, were in the culture for just video game in general in a lot of these different areas and countries that I may have been a little bit ignorant to coming into early on in my career. So just the biggest piece of working with all of these different global companies is being able to have representation for those people in those regions, like the evangelists here that we have on the panel as well, that really fully understand the region, can be a voice for their region, and can help guide those who are trying to make decisions for a global game to be successful in each of their own respective regions.
Yeah, that's awesome to be able to also be exposed to different cultures as well, so that you can also level up like as a human being, because that's also something that we tend to like not think about when we're in game development, that like sure we're like leveling up professionally as we like publish more titles or I release more titles and are part of different teams, but also being exposed to different people, especially in a big company where you get to work with people from other countries, that you really get to level up as a person and like learn things like about like internet cafes and like why they're so important in Asia, and like we don't have that here in the United States or perhaps even in other countries. So being able to understand other cultures as well is all part of this whole like being better human, understanding why representation matters across all fronts, not just for us but for all peoples. And I think that's a really great thing to share with our community as well, because we tend to definitely forget about those little details. So when it comes to growing, right? Because Matt, you are now a producer, and before, like in your career history, you were a QA. So transferring skill sets over from like perhaps QA testing to like production, like what did that look like for you? And like entering a new role, like what advice would you give people who are aspiring perhaps to change from to roles that may not even look like they're similar, that they may be completely different? Like how would you recommend, and what advice would you give to folks out there who want to change like pathways in games, and what kind of skill sets can be useful when transferring over into those types of skill sets?
I think one of the biggest pieces, I mean, being willing to take risks and be persistent with your goals and looking for opportunities is huge. But in relation to like AAA gaming in general, like a lot of us have started kind of on the ground floor, like QA, customer service. A lot of these types of roles are more they're entryways into the industry, right? Because when you're getting into like production and design and engineering and types of things at AAA industries, it can be kind of difficult and depressing when you're initially trying to outreach because there's so much experience that's required. But getting your foot in the door at a company somewhere in some role that may not necessarily be your end game, but helps you start to understand development processes for specific companies or just gaming as a whole, networking with people within the industry and within your company, and having kind of like insight onto where opportunities can arrive. I mean, the main reason I'm at Epic right now is because by happenstance of knowing Sean, um, I just was able to narrow in on this opportunity that I may not otherwise have been privy to. So um, it was, like I said earlier, it was difficult for me to kind of leave a full-time position and change tracks from QA over to production, but I was pretty determined that I wanted to get into production. So going online, starting to research the kind of things that producers do, what kind of project management methodologies that software uses. I pursued on my own getting a Scrum Master certification with agile methodologies and getting familiar with stuff, and leveraged a lot of the leadership opportunities that I had in my role as QA, as well as just trying to better learn what kind of things a producer can be involved in, and having some of the experience that I had in my schooling at Mason, which gave me a pretty broad array of different areas of game design. It all kind of culminated into finding this role that works and being able to be flexible in different areas of the company.
That's awesome to hear too. Like for those in chat, like I don't know if anybody asked any questions, but being determined to reach your goal is something, but having the the know-how to understand that you need to go out there and learn, and you need to grind to get from point A to point B. Like, a lot of people think it's really easy to be able to just transfer things over, or things get just handed to you on a platter. But the fact that, like, you went out and got certified, that you did your research, and that you did everything that you could possibly do to reach your goal, that's really admirable. And that's definitely inspirational to me, because I'm also trying to do the same thing in my life. Just like, let me learn programming and art and all this stuff outside of my work, so that I can level up too and grind, because I want to take that next step. And I think that's really awesome to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, Sean, I'm going to go back to you since you had a little bit of technical difficulties. Is everything working out now?
Yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience.
No worries. No worries. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Epic's employee resource group, and like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want it to be, and what do you want it to become for Epic? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm very proud of our Latin American heritage, and Epic gave us the opportunity to start up ERGs, and a small group of us connected together and decided, hey, we should start our own that's focused on Latin American focus and community building, and we're really grateful to Epic for the opportunity. Basically, we want to give back to our communities, both within Epic and outside of Epic. We have folks scattered internationally who are Latinx. We also include people from Spain, people from Portugal, but an emphasis on Latin America and Brazil, with Spanish speaking and Portuguese through Brazil. But we want to do things like mentor employees within the company. We want to promote initiatives externally to our communities. We want to partner with companies that are involved in development that could use the engine or benefit from things that Epic is doing. I know each of us, we have an ERG available within the company now to do these things, but some of us already do that on our spare time, just out of passion, just out of giving back. We think that, at least for me growing up, yo soy de Puerto Rico, de Ponce.
Ooh, Boricua!
That's right. When I was growing up, there wasn't as much organization as there is today. I don't remember a Latinx in gaming back then. I don't remember so many schools being available, all this access to technology being available. And so we want to share that with everyone. And we want the next generation to have access to what we have access to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's exactly our vision here at Latinx Gaming too, that we recognize that there's so many people who are not as privileged as us here in the United States. And that's why we decided to start our whole LATAM division, because we want to have resources. We want to have mentors. We want to have all these things that we have access to, ease of access to here in the United States, to be available to developers and young folks and students out there all over across Latin America. So that's really great to hear. And we're actually seeing more and more companies start Latinx focused ERGs, which is really inspirational, even to me as a developer, because it's like we're being noticed. It's like Heloá said before, it's like when you are noticed, there's something that happens like in your heart and your mind where like that can change somebody's life completely when you are noticed and feel like you are included in part of a community. So I think that Somos Epic is incredible. That's incredible work. And I hope that more and more companies get inspired and do the exact same thing. And that's, I think, how we can really bring more representation, more awareness to the games industry, but also just overall in our society. So actually, we had a few questions in chat that some people were posing. So somebody asked, Steve B. Dancer asked, what is everyone's favorite game?
That's a hard question. Yeah.
I feel like I've been asked this question in every interview I've been in, and I never have a
good answer. It's a trick question.
It's a trap.
Yes, 100%.
I don't know. My favorite game that I've ever worked on is probably What Remains of Edith Finch, which
I love that game.
A few years ago. That was just an amazing kind of like experience, and really was the culmination of a lot of people's kind of like dreams and understanding of what kind of emotional impact games could have. It doesn't necessarily have to be let's kill, 1 million people or, blow up stuff or anything. It was actually just kind of like a narrative experience that really touched on a lot of different feelings inside. And it was just a good entryway and a good example of how to use narrative and game design and interactivity to tell a story, and makes our kind of like chosen profession a worthwhile way to express yourself. So that'd be mine.
That's a good one. Anybody
Super
else want to
Mario
chime in?
Brothers 3. Super Mario Brothers 3. That game was life changing.
In the same vein of going off of the way that Hector framed it, in terms of the favorite game that I've worked on, because I've worked on a few at this point, I think Doom 2016 will always resonate with me. Anybody who's in the industry kind of probably feels a different sort of way for like the first game that they work on when they come into the industry. So for me, that was like the first project in AAA gaming that I got put on. I was on it for a year, from like the inception of dev work all the way through till post-release. So I made a lot of friends, I made a lot of connections, and it was really just kind of the jumping off point for me. So Doom 2016 will always be like my baby.
If I had to choose one, I think it was the pirated version of the Monkey Island games back in the 90s. I spent like so much time playing that game with my brothers, and we would have like this group of friends where we would call each other, like on the phone, on the line, like, how do I fix this? So it's something that actually got me together with my business partners when we started the studio, and it was our first game to actually make a point and click adventure, and the interactive adventures of Doug Mendoza and Pete Savoy, and it did really well, and we had a great support from the community, and even like Team Schaefer, and from Gilbert, and it's amazing when like when I remember like my mother being worried that I'd spend like so much time playing that game, and then it actually opened me like so much doors, because I actually made something out of that in life, later in life. So I think that game has a very soft spots for me, because it opens so many doors, and like it turned like a hobby or something like into my professional career, but also my life, and it's something I truly love.
I am
Anybody else have any
Rochelle.
favorite games? Oh, go ahead.
For me, Mario really shaped my childhood, but also games for me depend on the moment I am at. And to be very honest, now during pandemic, I've been playing a bunch of Animal Crossing, Redecor, and games that feel like very comforting.
Yes.
I feel you, sis. I'm there.
Okay, this is me now, and that may sound cheesy, but the games that I probably spent most hours in my life were the arena shooters in the 90s. So games like Unreal Tournament and Quake 3 Arena. And they're probably guilty of affecting my grades at the time. But also, they are guilty of actually making me get into this industry, because games like Unreal at the time and Quake released the tools, the modding tools, for free. So I was able to spend a lot of hours, learning and start learning the craft.
So my favorite game, just to put out there, is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. All my friends know. Everybody in my design in the studio that I work at know. But the reason why I want to bring it up, it's because me and my brothers, when we were little, used to call the Nintendo hotline for the walkthrough tips, because some of the stuff was just complicated when we were little, and we racked up that phone bill like $300 one time. And my parents got so mad, they actually took the N64 from us for a couple of weeks, and we couldn't play because we wrecked on the phone bill. So definitely have some good memories of my Puerto Rican parents. Definitely, when we say "le sacó el monstruo," like the monster came out, definitely had that experience playing games being little.
You got to answer this. So, did they buy you the game guide later?
They did not.
Okay. Okay.
It would have been cheaper than
They would much rather me play those like educative games like Jumpstart and things like that. They would rather me play those all day long than anything related with Nintendo or the PlayStation or anything like that.
It was so expensive in Argentina, to actually have a console and play like original games, that we used to live in this apartment building, and like my house was a Nintendo, was a Nintendo house. So then I don't know, the guys from the fifth floor, they were the Sega Genesis, So we would be like a group of kids just running around the building, going console to console. Just that's one of my
That's too
favorite
funny.
memories. Like just um, trying to share, this experience. Everybody thinks you are alone when you're playing games, and you are not. You are like sharing it with so many people.
Yeah, that's too funny. Oh, well. What happened? Oh, like I saw the stream like went blank for a second. I was like, what happened? Okay. Oh, Hector. So what are, through your experience, right? Because you have had quite a bit of years experience in the games industry and production and publishing and all that stuff. So I want to ask you, why do you think, or what does it mean to be more diverse in the games industry, and why is it important? Like from your experience that you have lived through your career and also your personal life being in games.
Yeah, I mean, it's important because look, we're all building towards this concept of the metaverse, right? Like it's been in popular culture, it's been in books, it's been talked about all over the place, right? Like I don't think I personally don't know if linear media in the future is going to be kind of like as all encompassing as it was now. Growing up as kids, it was this flat screen experience. We were watching TVs, and then video games were kind of like this weird thing on the side. I think our generation, having growing up and understanding that gaming isn't just for like nerdy or geeky or like this weird thing, it's starting to be more mass adoptable, just means that entertainment as a whole is about to start migrating towards a more immersive experience where people have agency and kind of get through things. And when that entertainment values comes in, you're going to need content that represents the people that enjoy it, right? And so Latinos, we're growing to be the largest minority, and I put minority in quotes, in a very quick way. And so what we need to do is just set kind of like the groundwork and inspire people so that when this new kind of like avenue of entertainment, is created, the people that are making the content look like us and are representative of kind of like the culture. And so growing up, like, coming through the industry, it's always been important to kind of like push that forward and let people know that like we're here. A lot of times folks just have blinders and they're just around the people that are doing the things that are with them and people that look like them, right? And so a lot of us probably came from socioeconomic statuses where we didn't have computers or we didn't have the latest stuff growing up. So pursuing computer science or pursuing game development was something that was like way outside of a dream of something that we wanted to do. So I think what I've always tried to do, at least in my career, is like, when you open the door, like leave the door open behind you for other folks so that they have that opportunity. We always talk about luck and we talk about mentorship, and those are things that are super important for us. So, for me, it's always been looking for those mentors and looking for those people that were going to be advocates and understood that the work that we were trying to do was important. And then when you get in a position of power, leave the door open behind you so that you can kind of like be that advocate and that mentor for other people to put it up, because we're the ones that are going to have to push everything forward, right? Nobody's going to do it for us. We're going to have to do it ourselves. So for me, that's just been kind of like the importance of always diversifying and making sure, because it's not just the same kind of people that play games all the time, right? Like in Mortal Kombat, we made a character called Kotal Khan, which was like, kind of like very inspired by Aztec and Mayan kind of like deities and putting it in there because I understood, and going around and representing the game was super popular in Mexico and Latin America and all kinds of stuff. So why not try to, kind of like get content that speaks to that audience so people see like, hey, folks are looking out for me, right? Like people understand that it's not just, this one person's fantasy, it's all of our fantasies together. So that's the way that I've always tried to spend my time and spend the energy that I have in the positions that I have to open it up.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what about, and this is a question really for all of you, but you can start it off, Hector. When it comes to like your upbringing and the way that like your culture and your heritage and like where you grew up, your family, how that has influenced you as a person. Like, how has that impacted like the way that you protect yourself and like talk to people on your dev teams? Like, do you feel like your values and traditions that you grew up with, and that culturally speaking, does that like translate over to how you treat your team members, how you collaborate, how your teamwork is? Like, do you see any type of impact in that in your personal careers?
Yeah, definitely. And it starts with empathy, right? Like, we're taught empathy as a youngster in the Latino culture. People try to kind of like gloss it over and like, oh, we're warm and we're loving and we're welcoming, but that's real, right? Like that's a representation of being taught empathy at a super early level. And being kind of like well versed and having that in your kind of like mindset of just being open, working with people, being collaborative, that's what makes us so successful in this industry. Nobody's making a game by themselves. Maybe, once in a while you can try to do it, but if you want to make something better, it's not just about you. It's about being able to work with everyone through differences, through difficulties, and being warm and not just starting out with, negativity. So to me, being taught empathy in our culture and in our family and being loving and open and extending your arm to everybody has definitely helped me in my career and helped all content that I've always ever been a part of.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that? Maybe like how your upbringing and like your family values and your culture has impacted the way that you like collaborate in your teams and the work that you do professionally?
I'll jump in.
Yes.
Go ahead, Martina. I'll go after you.
No, go, Sean.
I think all of us could relate. In my upbringing, my parents they had to choose a different route. They weren't able to pursue their passions. My mom was really big into art, and between her and my father, they both joined the military. And I come from a really hardworking family, and they inspired me to pursue my passions and support that. So I take advantage of that and put in my best effort, and I do everything I can to give back. And I guess what I take with me to work and to the industry at large is just respect, passion, hard work. I like to grind and put in as much effort as anyone on the team, and give them as much respect and props as possible.
Go ahead,
Yours,
Martina.
Yeah, so adding to that, I think that there is something like that I told this to the guys in the past. I learned this from like a 90-year-old aunt that I have. In Latin America, we are used to a lot of things going south more often than we like. And it's something like, I remember back in 2001, we had a huge crisis here, and I remember being like so sad, and she was like, "Oh, Martina," and I was expecting her to tell me like everything is going to be fine, and she told me like, "This is going to happen again. Like, you need to be ready." So I think something that always that I always find when I'm working with other Latinos is that we always try to find a solution. It's so easy to work with Latinos because we are kind of like always looking forward, like how we can just just keep moving. It's interesting to see that attitude when you are like not fixating on just what is wrong, but just trying to make the most out of what you got. So that's one thing, and the other, it's like as the guys were saying, I don't know if this is like food related or what, but we are like kind of like people that love to share. You guys were saying like, well, we are so lucky, a lot of people helped us. I had this amazing people sharing with me information and like taking me with them to companies as amazing as Epic. And I think that when I was looking back, I spent a lot of time also doing volunteering for the last 10 or 12 years, and I keep doing it, and I can keep enjoying it, and I think it's part of our culture to just share everything we have and just try to bring as many people as we can with us. So yes, I think I kind of love that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, y'all, and getting a little bit personal with me. I always like to bring that little personal flavor to this because we are like, I always find that us like the Latinx community, we're so open to being vulnerable and like sharing our life experiences with people, and that just makes us even more resilient because we can like validate each other's like experiences and like root for each other, be each other's cheerleaders, which is one of the things that I absolutely love about our community, that everybody's willing to pick each other up and help each other out in whatever way we can. So we're kind of like being these like beacons of light in this bleak world, in this industry where sometimes you do feel alone and you feel like you don't belong. But being able to have like brothers and sisters who are walking alongside you and are the goal is the same. It's like make that great game, like build yourself up, like climb that ladder of leadership, like set your goals. Like we're all like running that race together, and it's so beautiful to see that we can just do this all together and that we don't have to do this alone. So let me see if there's any more questions in chat. Everybody's pretty much saying that vulnerability is strong, and we bring the sazon through our diversity. I love that. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we have reached the end of this panel session. So thank you so much. Y'all are awesome, and I wish you the total best in all of your careers. And we're happy to have you in the Latinx community and part of Unidos Online.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for inviting
Alrighty,
us.
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right,
Bye bye
everybody,
from Brazil.
enjoy the rest of Unidos Online, and we'll see you later. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.